Hello there friends, my name is Rachel GNS Middle. Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name and my middle name is my last name, and I am here on behalf of Four-Bear Theatre to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas by very pedantically ranking every element of them. I thought that was going to be hard. That was actually so easy doing that in one breath. I'm just too talented. I keep telling you these terrible, horrible eyes. I'm so sorry, but we are in fact doing alto roles today. I might just stop telling you what's coming next because apparently I don't know myself. I've used slightly different parameters here than maybe I've used on other characters' videos. I have done a mark out of 20 for music, as per usual. I have also done a mark out of 20 for lyrics, but within the lyrics I've actually included marks for comedy. And I don't know if I should have been doing that before, because often when someone's got a high mark for lyrics, it's because the lyrics are funny, but then I've also got a category for comedy. And I don't know how fair that is, so I'm just going to see what happens if I do it this way. And it yielded pretty logical and good results. I've given a mark out of 10 for emotional complexity, just how much Gilbert and Sullivan make you care for the character. It's possible they were maybe set up in not the best light, but then later on drew on the audience's sympathy and actually became a very likeable character. Maybe they're even likeable from the moment they come in, even if they are meant to be bad or evil or old. I give them a mark out of 10 for importance to the narrative, as usual, and that, I believe, makes 60 points. So, with that in mind, let us get started. Number 15 I have given to Inez from the Gondoliers. Sadly, she's another of these parts that maybe she should have been considered in the same category as the chorus principals because her part is so small. She doesn't really have a chance to be any higher than this. I gave her a 12 for music because what she does have, even though it's only tiny, is actually very impactful and very beautiful. I know it's only recit, but there's something just so exciting about her vocal line. And it definitely creates tension, which then she resolves herself beautifully. So there is something to be said for that. And the lyrics definitely help her with that as well. She's got lovely poetry in that little recit she has. I gave her a 5 out of 10 for her emotional complexity because even though there's a ton of places that Gilbert and Sullivan could have gone with this character, that she's only on stage for a minute, I did actually see years and years ago, I can't remember which company it was. It was an amateur company at the festival, but they had Inez on stage in a lot of scenes in the first and second act. Or maybe it couldn't have been the second act because she would have been in the torture chamber then. And it's the kind of thing I would like to do if I had more than no time to rehearse my shows. I did give her a 6 for importance to narrative because even though she's only on stage from the very end, she is vitally important to the narrative and people talk about her a lot when she's not on stage. Number 14 I have given to Diana from THESPIS. Another disappointing entry from THESPIS. Hopefully there'll be some better ones soon. I have given Diana a 10 for music. Because even though we don't particularly know what it is, and as far as we know it was brilliant, she actually has very little of it. There's really not too much for Diana at all. And she doesn't have that much dialogue either. And the majority of her lines are about other people and what they're doing rather than about herself. So you really don't get too much of an idea of who she is as a character. In fact, she's one of these people who is talked about more than she talks about herself, but only in the context of what we already know about who Diana is as the god figure and not about the character in this show. So all in all, I just find her quite an underwhelming character. I don't particularly connect with her. It certainly takes quite a performer to bring her to life, which certainly can be done. I have seen it. I don't think many altos would choose this one to play, even if they know they could do it well because they're good. There's just a maximum of what you can do with this material. I think it's not particularly strong. I gave her a 6 for emotional complexity and a 6 for importance to the narrative. I think that's pretty fair enough, seeing as she is one of the gods who are growing old and so have to be replaced. She does contribute to that narrative, and as I said, she is talked about after she's gone as well. Her emotional complexity, I think we are seeing a prototype of this character whose age is making him a little bit insecure, but it's not insecure in a way that we're used to with other characters in the canon. In a way, actually, giving her a 6 was generous, and maybe I should have given her a 5 for that, because we don't really learn too much about her. I suppose that even if she isn't particularly emotional per se, we do get to watch her experiencing emotions in response to other people doing things. So I suppose she does have some emotional scope as a character. She doesn't seem to like Mercury very much. Oh, that little scamp. From having a brief look at her lines in the dialogue, because I couldn't remember a single one of her lines, so then I had a look at them, and they're mostly about how much of a scamp Mercury is. That's it. And Mercury is a scamp, but yeah. She is not a part I have any interest at all in playing. Number 13, I have given to Mrs. Partlett from The Sorcerer. Mrs. Partlett! Remember that from my dialogue video. Very, very funny scene. So, Mrs. Partlett, she gets a 12 for music. That puts her on the same marks as Inez, even though she doesn't have maybe as much solo material. Inez's solo is actually like relatively long. Mrs. Partlett has a short recit, which is lovely, and even though it's about somebody else rather than her, musically it's nice, and she gets to be in the quintet, which is amazing. So that's what earned her a 12 rather than Diana's 10. I actually gave her a 14 out of 20 for lyrics/dialogue. I think her dialogue in that scene in the quintet is very funny, and she also generates a lot of good dialogue from other people talking about her in that same scene. She's just an example of a character who only appears really briefly, but you just automatically know what kind of person she is. She's a very vivid character and immediately very lovable and very funny and silly. And what's nice about her is that it makes a change from these female characters who feel very insecure about growing older. She is older, but she has absolutely no insecurity about it. She's just like, yeah, I'm pretty old. And I think there's something to be said about that. If she was a larger part, like if she had more to do, I think I'd have ranked her a lot higher. I gave her a 5 though for emotional complexity. We don't particularly learn the intricacies of Mrs. Partlett, and we never get to see her experience a moment of true stakes or true emotion. It's all just, oh, my daughter, you look sad, and then, oh, I've fallen in love with this man and we're gonna get married. There's not really much in there that you can latch on to as an actor, apart from just playing up the comedy of it. I gave her a 6 for importance to the narrative. I do think that her scene is an important catalyst in Aline and Alexis perhaps changing their opinions slightly about this potion and its effects and what they've done to the residents of the village. So yeah, she does play an important part, and I like her, but she has come relatively low just because her part's quite small. So have a look at these earrings. These earrings are caps hanging off branches. So what happened, I was at work, I work in a clothes shop, and I went to take the bins out. And luckily I brought my phone with me, because these days you could buy things on your phone. You know, you just go, woo, woo. It's great, we live in the future. But anyway, I went to the bins and then I came back and I was in this market and this lady had these earrings. And I did this thing where I was just walking and I saw them and went, and I went back on myself and just went, these please. I was not going to walk past these earrings without buying them. How good are they? I'm going to wear them every day. Maybe not every day. That's so good. By the way, you might not know this about me, but I like cats. Number 12 I have given to Dame Carruthers from the Yeomen of the Guard. And this is the one on the list that I think people are going to mostly disagree with, because I just seem to have a vendetta against this character. But I find her presence in this opera really annoying. I think she was just shoehorned in to help the plot progress. She's not a well-formed character. Who is she? I don't know. She is a person who loves the tower and who sees stuff and then threatens to snitch about it unless this guy marries her, who we've only learnt a few songs ago that she's in love with, even though that didn't come up in the first act. Like, come on. I don't find her a good character. I think there are certain things you can do as an actor with her that would be fun, and I've certainly seen people play her in fun ways, but the material you've got to work with is not too great. Even musically, and again for Yeomen we think the music is all so good, but her music, it's alright. I gave her a 15 for that, which I think is fair. Gallant Norman Foes is lovely, but I actually think the choruses and the stuff that the tenors and basses sing in response to her is actually musically more interesting than what she sings. She has Strange Adventure, which is lovely, and she has Rapture Rapture. Oh, and she also has that Waters are ye, whom do ye ward? And that's pretty cool, actually. That's pretty good. Maybe that would have warranted her an extra mark, but it wouldn't have changed her position, so yeah. I think a 15 is fair, in any case. I gave her a 14 out of 20 for lyrics/dialogue. I think that was maybe me being a bit too kind, if anything. Her dialogue is not terribly good. It's not particularly eloquent, and the stuff in the pre-Strange Adventure scene just comes out of nowhere a bit. And all that stuff about Kate writing down in her tablets what Elsie's saying. I don't know why people find it funny when that's read out. And Kate's lines, everyone loves Kate's lines. I wrote it all down in my tablets. Anyway, we're talking about Dame Carruthers, not Kate. I gave her a 6 for the other two things as well. Emotional complexity, 6. Yeah, I guess she loves somebody and she's excited to catch people out in a plot. And 6 for importance to the narrative, even though, as previously discussed, the narrative in Yeomen is actually not the best. Change my mind. Great characters, lots of cool stuff going on, but the actual story of Yeomen is quite confusing, and Dame Carruthers is an attempt to make it less confusing, and in doing so you've just made like a bad character whose only function is to try and get some of the more complicated parts of the story tied up. Yes, Kitty. Number 11 goes to Lady Blanche from Princess Ida. I remembered Lady Blanche as being a very good part, but I also am remembering the last person I saw play her who was extremely funny. If anyone wants to know, ask me and I'll tell you. So I think that there is potential with Lady Blanche's material to be really, really funny with it. However, there's not a lot of it, especially there's not much music. She has that little section in Merrily Ring the Luncheon Bell. She has her duet with Melissa, but I don't believe she has anything more than that. Unless you include Come Mighty Must, which a lot of people do for this very reason, because Blanche doesn't have much. But from what I can remember about that aria, yeah, it's fine, but I don't think it's particularly good when compared to the others. And I must admit to being secretly glad whenever they cut that. I'm always quite relieved because I just want to get to Gently Gently because I love that song. But I have seen it done well. The last person I saw doing it did do it well, so maybe there is an argument to include it. We will talk about that more when we talk about the alto arias. I gave her a 14 for music, which I think is pretty fair because even though the music in Princess Ida is glorious, she doesn't really have too big a part to play in that. She doesn't have a big share of that music. I gave her a 15 for lyrics/dialogue. Most of what she has isn't good, honestly. Her lyrics really aren't terribly inspired. Her dialogue isn't terribly inspired. I wouldn't give it any more than Gilbert's standard mark, which is a 14. However, I did give her an extra point because I find her little mini monologue when all the other ladies' chorus have gone off very funny. I should command here. I was born to rule. But do I rule? I don't. Why? I don't know. I shall someday. Not yet. I bide my time. I once was someone. And a was, will be. The present as we speak becomes the past. The past repeats itself, and so is future. This sounds involved. It's not. It's right enough. How good is that? That's so cool. I mean, I must admit, as a person who has a master's in philosophy, it's kind of gobbledygook. Unless it's so advanced I don't understand it, which is a possibility. Anyway, philosophy aside, the issue for me with Blanche is that what she wants isn't something that's particularly relatable. She just wants to run this school. And it's not really clear why. It's not clear if she wants it for the power, or because she wants to look after these young women, or because she believes that she has the abilities required to do that, that she has some information that Princess Ida doesn't. She believes she's cleverer than Princess Ida, and that'll help her, because it just seems quite empty. It seems like it's just a person being hungry for power. And what's odd about that is that that's traditionally quite a masculine thing. And although I very much fully believe that there are females out there who are hungry for power and will do bad things in order to get that power, I do see that as more of a masculine quality. So it's odd in a play that's about feminism, essentially. I can definitely see how in a woman's college there would certainly be petty infighting, but to have a person just concerned with power for power's sake seems very unfeminine to me. And perhaps that's a good thing. Perhaps it's good to have a character who is kind of more masculinely coded. I gave her a 6 for emotional complexity for those reasons I've just been talking about. I don't find her particularly relatable. If we'd known why, maybe because she wants to be admired, maybe she just wants to be liked, but we just don't get to learn that. And so, yeah, I only gave her a 6 for that. I gave her a 6 for importance of the narrative too. She doesn't really play a big part in the narrative apart from, I suppose, just her presence is like a kind of threat to Ida, but I don't really buy that it's a real threat. Princess Ida seems not to be in the least bit threatened by her and neutralises her pretty much instantly. That was brought up in front of her. So I don't think she's a particularly well put together character. I think Gilbert maybe slightly dropped the ball on her. Unlike characters under her on the list who really have promise, but that promise just wasn't fully realised because of a lack of material. Blanche, yeah, she doesn't have too much material either, but it does seem like Gilbert didn't quite get into her head in the same way that he's gotten into the heads of other characters. And as a result, he's just not really been quite as funny. She seems more of an abstract character than a real one. Number 10, I have given to Lady Sangazure from The Sorcerer. This is a character who, if I'm just talking about her without thinking about the marks, I would love to play her. I think there are loads of good opportunities for a performer with this role. But for some reason, when you actually look at the material she has, it doesn't seem like it's very good. So I think this is another part, a little bit like Constance, where there's a lot of opportunity there that the material kind of gives you. The fact she has no dialogue doesn't help her. I think when other characters have dialogue, it kind of humanises them. But Lady Sangazure only has music, so I think it just makes you feel like you're a bit distant from her as an audience member. It doesn't really help you to get closer to her and to relate to her. And I think that's part of what the problem is with her. I gave her a 13 out of 20 for music. She has that amazing duet with Marmaduke in Act 1, which came up quite high on my list of duets. But then apart from that, she really doesn't have too much at all. Just that duet with Wells, which I previously discussed in my duet video, as really not being very good at all, lyrically or musically. I did give her a 14 for lyrics/dialogue. I do think that her introductory recit to Aline after Aline finishes her aria, I do think that that is very beautiful. Not necessarily musically, I think it might be a bit vanilla musically, but lyrically, I think it is beautiful. I know today is a really lovely day for you, and I'm here for you. And if I seem upset, it's nothing to do with you. It's just that this situation is a little bit triggering for me. And that's such a nice sentiment. And it's lovely that Gilbert and Sullivan took the time to tell that little bit of the story. And I wish we got to know more about hers and Marmaduke's relationship, but we don't. But that duet they have is wonderful, and that's where most of that 14 came from. I gave her a 7 for importance in the narrative, because of her reappearance in Act 2. That is a big point in the plot. Also in Act 1, she is Marmaduke's love interest and Aline's mother. She is quite a big part of this story, but not more than a 7, I would say. I think a 7 is about right. I did, though, give her an 8 out of 10 for emotional complexity. Even if the music and the lyrics surrounding hers and Wells's interaction in Act 2 isn't terribly strong, it does give the performer a really great opportunity to experience a very wide range of emotions. So in Act 1, she's very repressed, and in Act 2, she's much more open. But yeah, Lady Sangazure is just portrayed as a bit sad, and that, I suppose, is reality, and it's good to represent reality, but also, I don't think Gilbert garnered the same level of poignancy with this character as he has with other characters he has done similar things with. Number 9 I've given to one of my very beloved characters who is very special to me for a reason I shall give you after I say the name of the part, which is Little Buttercup from HMS Pinafore. The reason Little Buttercup is very dear to me is because she was the first GNS part I ever played. In fact, when I played her, it was in a production of HMS Starship Pinafore, and I was playing Little RoboCup, and I had this costume that was just this foiled box, and my hair was in like Pippi Longstocking plaits with a coat hanger. It was awesome. I love that part. She was very dear to me, and I can definitely see why so many people love Little Buttercup. She is one of the most loved characters in GNS, I think. So why she only come number 9 out of 15? Her music slightly lets her down. I gave her a 14 out of 20. I don't particularly care for her opening aria. I find it a little bit simplistic. I think it's definitely Sullivan's standard and not really any better than that. Things are seldom what they seem. I'm really not a big fan of, but I do really love her pre-finale song many years ago. I love the way that evokes tension. Did I accurately portray an orchestra there? I think I might have done. And it's just so stupid. And I know that back in those days, this was just such a convention, like people being switched at birth and mayhem occurring. People must have just found this so funny when you said, oh, yeah, we saw that coming. But it doesn't matter, because if the actor really manages to portray that the character really believes in what they're doing, then it doesn't matter that it's a contrivance. All that matters is how much the characters care about what they're doing, and to see Buttercup like tying herself in knots like all the way through. Rave that name! Remorse, remorse. Like, you know from that moment, oh yeah, she switched. Oh, she switched Rave with somebody. You just know. You know. It's why everyone laughs in the Gondoliers at that line that Lewis says to Casilda, that, well, as you know, my mother was the nursemaid who looked after him. Okay. So when we did Starship Pinafore, I sang, confide in me, fear not, I am a robot. I thought that was the best thing ever. I gave her a 7 out of 10 for both narrative importance and emotional complexity. I think Little Buttercup is a tremendously emotional character. I didn't give her higher than that because Pinafore isn't as long as the others, and you don't really get a chance to really delve into her psyche. But from what you do see, it is lovely. Her relationship with the captain is very wholesome and refreshingly honest as well. The way she manages to be open with him in the beginning of the second act. And their relationship in Sir, You Are Sad, in that little rest, that's lovely. I gave her a 15 out of 20 for her lyrics and dialogue. She has some cracking dialogue. Red am I, and round, and rosy, may be, for I have dissembled well. But hark ye, my merry friend, hast ever thought that beneath the gay and frivolous exterior there may lurk a canker worm which is slowly but surely eating its way into one's very heart? No, my lass, I can't say I've ever thought that. I like it when someone says something dramatic and then someone else just immediately dismisses it. It's good. Number 8, I have given to Lady Sophy from Utopia Limited. And I am on such a massive Utopia Limited kick at the moment. It's because I am desperate for Forbear Theatre to put on an 8-person version of Utopia Limited, which I have already worked out how to do. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested in that, hit me up. I'd like to talk about that. I gave her a 17 out of 20 for music. I think we can all agree that the music of Utopia Limited is wonderful, and I don't know if it has the best music of all of them, but I'm beginning to think it may. Baldface Ranger, I don't like as much as her other stuff, to be honest, but Subjected to Your Heavenly Gaze, that's quite exciting, especially the second section. Her aria in the second half, I do think is nice, and actually lyrically it's pretty good as well, but I'll get to that in a sec. And her second act duet with King Paramount is just precious, and it gives me happy goosebumps when I think of it. And that is why you did not buy the offer on the spot. There is a slight chance I marked it too high for music. I forgot that Baldface Ranger was just a bit vanilla, but I would imagine that her other songs do bring that score up. I gave her a 13 out of 20 for lyrics/dialogue. I love her second act aria, even though Sullivan didn't like it. I've just read in my annotated Bradley that Sullivan wrote Gilbert a letter about Lady Sophy and how bad she was. And the thing is, I actually get where both of them are coming from, because I love that she's a bit different to his other altos. I love that she is meant to be beautiful, and that she has this regal presence which is just captivating to anyone in a royal position all over the world, and she's had this problem in people falling in love with her. But on the other hand, it does make her kind of flat as a character. I just wish there was something else more to her than that we got to see before her second act aria. I wonder if there is a way you can bring that energy of how she doesn't care about what somebody looks like. She just wants somebody who's a good person, and that she keeps just being let down over and over again by these people who are in positions of power, and so she's given up on them. And then this behaviour from King Paramount has made her almost give up on him, but then she realises that Scaffio and Fantas were coercing King Paramount into writing these awful things about himself in the papers, and it wasn't true. And it's actually genuinely one of the most beautiful love stories in the canon, but it's not really given the weight I think it deserves, and that would be a big challenge for a director and the actors to get across. Her dialogue is not great. Her dialogue, sadly, is just not funny. She is not a funny character. I don't think she has a single laugh. Baldface Ranger is kind of funny, or at least it would be if it didn't repeat things over and over and over again and go on forever. But it's mostly the twins that are funny in that, and not her. She's just narrating a funny situation, but she's not the one getting the laughs. It's quite a thankless part comedically. She just isn't. She doesn't have a single joke, and for a GNS character, like, that is an issue. I gave her a 7 for emotional complexity. I would have given her higher had the beautiful scene in Act 2 been in any way reflected in Act 1. It just doesn't seem to match up with who she is in Act 1. She's just not given enough lines about herself and who she is. It's all just about her introducing what she's done for the twins. But you don't ever get to hear, like, how she feels about it, you know? I gave her a 7 out of 10 for the importance of the narrative. She is important, but again, Utopia Limited has a weird narrative, and only a couple of people are really genuinely important in Utopia Limited, and she isn't one of these people, necessarily. Number 7 I have given to the Duchess of Plaza Toro from the Gondoliers. What a great part. The Duchess is so much fun, and she gets to be in loads of brilliant stuff. She isn't one of the most well-constructed characters, I would say, along with a lot of characters from the Gondoliers, she doesn't have too much individuality, but her aria, I'd say out of every aria that a character has in the Gondoliers, hers, I think, tells us most about who she is, and that has to count for something. I gave her a 15 out of 20 for music. She doesn't have too much solo apart from that one song she sings. However, she does get to be in From the Sunny Spanish Shore, Enterprise of Marshal Kine, Try We Lifelong, to a lesser extent, I Stole the Prince, and The Gavotte. I Am a Courtier, Grave and Serious. I almost forgot the name of a GNS song, for goodness sake. I also gave her a 16 out of 20 for her lyrics and dialogue because she just has very funny lyrics. I don't think her dialogue stands up to maybe some of the characters higher on this list who have maybe got the similar mark, but her lyrics are just very good. On the Day That I Was Wedded is a very funny song, and her and the Duke just make quite a solid double act when it comes to dialogue. I think that the two of them really bring those scenes to life, because you've got Casilda and Lewis who are maybe perhaps a little bit wet. Casilda's got a bit of spark inside her, but they're just the romantic characters. They're not particularly interesting. But the Duke and Duchess really do help those scenes. And the scene in Act 2 with Casilda, she has some funny lines there. It was very difficult, my dear, but I said to myself, that man is a duke, and I will love him. Several of my relations bet me I couldn't, but I did. Desperately. It's just her presence. She has such a strong presence. I don't have a category for presence in this, but I think maybe her mark for lyrics and dialogue is a bit higher than it should be, because she is kind of piggybacking on some of the Duke's lines. I gave her a 7 for emotional complexity. I don't think she's the most emotionally complex character, but she does have a journey, and she does tell us about how she managed to love the Duke, and she has feelings towards the situation with Casilda as well. So she does certainly experience things, and she has opinions about things. Is she important to the narrative? I gave her a 6 for it. Like with every other character in the Gondoliers, she's just one part of a very big picture. So I think it does take a very good actor to make the absolute most of this part. Number 6 I have given to Ruth from The Pirates of Penzance, the slightly more problematic version of a nursemaid falling in love with one of her charges. The way she aggressively pursues Frederick is not particularly pleasant. I remember when I played Ruth for the first time, I've actually played her twice, but when I played her for the first time, I was 19 years old, and the first thing I learnt about her was how absolutely adored she was in the GNS community. And I did have a relatively good time playing her, but I remembered feeling very left out of a lot of the action, not being in that big scene between the Major General's entrance and the end of the Act 1 finale, apart from that little bit where she comes in. You do feel very out of it and a bit lonely during rehearsals. So if you are joining a GNS society to make friends and feel included, Ruth is not the best part to play. But if you are doing it for work, then yeah, it's a great part. Ruth is brilliant. I gave her a 15 out of 20 for music. I don't think maybe her music is as sophisticated as some of the others on this list. However, she does have rather a lot of it. She has her opening song. She has Oh False One You Have Deceived Me. She has a little bit of material in the Act 1 finale. Then she has that amazing section in Act 2 with the Paradox song and Away Away. And she even has a little bit in the Act 2 finale also. Her music is very good, especially the sections in Act 2. And Oh False When You Have Deceived Me, that's also amazing. I don't think too much of her opening solo, but that is an expositional song, which are never particularly good, with the exception of In Every Mental Law from Utopia Limited. I gave her a 16 out of 20 for her lyrics/dialogue. I think Ruth does have some of the strongest dialogue, certainly the strongest we've talked about so far. Her scene with Frederick is very funny. Oh, Master, I have a slight cold, but otherwise I'm quite well. Very good. Oh, this is the voices of young girls. If you should see them, I am lost. It's, if you take out the horrible problematic element of it, it is very funny. Her lines aren't so good in Act 2, she's more just there with the Pirate King. He has most of the meat in those scenes. But certainly her scene with Frederick is just so good that I gave her a 16 for that alone, really. I gave her a 7 for importance of the narrative, which I think is relatively fair. She does come back on with the Pirate King and cause a change, but I feel like that's just mostly the Pirate King. He's the one doing most of the talking, like she didn't have to be there. The fact that she had this emotional connection to Frederick and has come back perhaps makes that more powerful, but I wouldn't give her higher than a 7 for importance to the narrative. I mean, certainly she doesn't compare to Frederick when it comes to importance to the narrative. I gave her a 6 for emotional complexity. This is the one where people might disagree with me. They might have given her higher. Even though she does experience a lot of emotions in this opera and she is very much in love with Frederick, she seems to forget about that relatively easily, or maybe she hasn't forgotten about that and is behaving out of spite. But whatever way you look at it, her character and her motivations are just a little bit confusing. Whereas in the past, you really feel like you warm to the villains of GNS operas. Ruth is just a bit confusing, and the way you'd react to her loving Frederick isn't so much, oh, that's a shame. It's more like, At least these days. Perhaps it was a bit different at the time. Perhaps it was just known as a convention and Gilbert was deliberately taking that convention to its limits. So I do appreciate that, but I just think that really as a character she's quite difficult to empathise with, and if you do empathise with her, I mean, I guess we can all empathise for falling in love with somebody you shouldn't really fall in love with, but for the boy that you were the nursemaid of and who brought him up, that is creepy, man. Maybe it is just us woke, snowflakey young people who care about this kind of thing, but it really does tarnish my opinion of her. But I do appreciate that she is a really loved character in GNS, and she's certainly quite fun to play because she gets to dance around with the pirates a lot and she gets some great material. So yeah, I don't really quite know how to feel about her as a character. I don't know how relatable she is, but I do really appreciate her, and that's why she's come high on this list. Number 5 I have given to Dame Hannah from RUDDIGORE, and this one was a little bit surprising to me that she came so high because I don't tend to think of her as a particularly interesting character. When you think of the other characters in RUDDIGORE, like the other female characters, Rose, Mad, Margaret, they stand out so much as being great characters, and perhaps it makes her look a bit vanilla compared to them, but she's actually great. I don't think she's the funniest of these alto characters, but she is quite funny, and she's got some fantastic music. I mean, that opening song she has, her part of the madrigal in the Act 1 finale, her duet, which is not a duet, let's face it, it's just a solo, with Roderick in Act 2 is absolutely beautiful. And not to mention, she gets that really awesome confrontation with Robin when he like pulls her out of the sack or whatever. She's saying all these words about being this defenseless woman, but she clearly has control of that situation. And that's what Gilbert does so well. He takes situations that could be hugely problematic and unpleasant and uncomfortable, but he subverts the power of them. So rather than feeling frightened for this woman that's being kidnapped, you start to actually fear for the person who's kidnapped her, which is not reality. That isn't ever the case in reality, but that's where a lot of this comedy comes from. It's dark and it's weird, and Gilbert is the king of this. I gave her a 16 out of 20 for music for this reason, for all of the music I've just listed, by the way. I also gave her a 16 out of 20 for her lyrics/dialogue. She doesn't have a huge amount of dialogue, but what she does have is very good, especially her scene with Roderick at the end. This is strange, meeting after so many years. Very. I thought you were dead. I am. I died 10 years ago. And are you pretty comfortable? Pretty well. That is, yes, pretty well. You don't deserve to be.
For I loved you all the while, dear, and it made me dreadfully unhappy to hear of all your goings on, you bad, bad boy.
I think she's great, and I think that that scene and the following song have such comedy and emotional poignancy. So even if she isn't the most overtly laugh out loud funny character in the canon, like funny alto character, I do think she's really got something very special, and There Grew a Little Flower is just beautiful. I only gave her a 7 for emotional complexity, purely because even though that moment is tremendously poignant, you don't really see too much else of her in the opera, so I think that there is less weight given to that than maybe there would have been had she been a more important character. But it's still lovely, and certainly a lot for an actor to make use of. I gave her a 7 out of 10 for her importance to the narrative. I think she does a great job explaining the situation with the ghosts, and she does a great job introducing us to Rose as well, and she neatly ties it off in the end with Roderick, all the while being just a lovely, very emotionally valuable character. I just think that she doesn't pop maybe as much as some of these other characters in Ruddidegore and in other operas, which is a shame because she is lovely, but she deserves her place here, I think. Number 4, I have given to the Baroness von Krakenfeldt from The Grand Duke. As a funny side note, I just auditioned for a production of The Grand Duke, and for fun, because it's an amateur show and anything goes, I auditioned for the Baroness von Krakenfeldt, among other things, and it was very funny, and I'm not an alto. But in preparation for that audition, I was thinking what to sing, and I was going through all of her material, and she has some great material. Oh, I feel like my camera moved. I had to take a call. Oh no. Well, sure it was something like that. Anyway, Baroness Kronwackenfeld. Baroness von Krakenfeldt. I gave her a 16 out of 20 for music, which I think, if anything, was being a bit stingy, because her music is lovely. Come to think about it, I think her music is better than Lady Sophie's. I mean, not that Lady Sophie would have moved any lower from not having a 17 for music, but maybe the Baroness should be higher, but I do think she's in the right place on the list, so I don't really want to fiddle about with her too much. I gave her a 17 out of 20 for dialogue and lyrics. I think that she's got some really great dialogue. Her first scene with Rudolph, I think, is good, but the one I think is particularly brilliant is when she re-enters in Act 2 and faces off with Julia. Just get a load of these lines. Is this a court morning or a fancy ball? My dear, under the circumstances you are doing admirably, and you'll improve with practice. It's so difficult being a lady when one isn't born to it. She's great. What a character. The only reason she's not higher, I think, is because she doesn't have the same level of poignancy, I think, as some of the others do, but what a character. This upper class, like, very fancy woman, and I think you can really absolutely go to town on just how fancy this person is. But also how cheap she is as well, and her song Come Bumpers, I mean, that's so good. I once gave an evening party, a sandwich and cut orange ball, but the guests had such appetites hearty that I couldn't enjoy it at all. It's just, if you just imagine like the most eccentric, really rich person, you know, not, I don't know a whole load of eccentric rich people, but, you know, you get that picture. Happy man, you little wreck of the extent of the good things you are in for. When you killed Rudolph, you adopted all his overwhelming responsibilities. Know then that I, Caroline von Krakenfeldt, am the most overwhelming of them all. You see, I want to play this part now. I kind of wish I was an alto, that I would have done my audition better. But yeah, you never know. Maybe by the time you watch this video, I will have this part, but maybe not. I gave her an 8 out of 10 for emotional complexity. I think this character, even if she isn't terribly poignant, as I was saying, she does just have such a clear character. You know exactly what kind of person she is very quickly, and then everything she says just reinforces that. Her emotions aren't terribly relatable from the perspective of ordinary people, but I think just in terms of her portraying that very rich, eccentric lady. I think we all kind of know who she is, and we all just like to see a character like that because she's just fabulous. And she never once is insecure about her age or her appearance. She doesn't get any higher than an 8 for emotional complexity, because I think to be truly emotional complex, you have to see like a little bit more darkness in this. But she does get to experience emotions. I mean, you get to see her drunk, if drunk is an emotion, or rather, her drunkenness brings out the emotions that she has. She gets to be heartbroken, I guess, slightly, when Ludwig goes off with the Princess of Monte Carlo in the end. I know it's not terribly weighty, but because by that point it's just so chaotic. But still, you get to see her experiencing a relatively wide array of emotions. You get to see her angry, you get to see her lustful, you get to see her heartbroken for a moment. And I gave her a 7 for importance of the narrative. Again, she's just a part of a larger machine rather than being any one individual. But I think all the characters are like this in this list, really. No alto, apart from maybe one, is really the main part of a story. And even that one, she doesn't even come on for ages, so... Ugh. Number 3 goes to Lady Jane from Patience. And this is a character who I feel maybe should have possibly gone below the Baroness, because when I did the scoring, she did turn out a bit lower. And I had a bit of a fiddle. And the reason I had a bit of a fiddle is because to the community, and indeed to me, and I'm talking as a person who loves the Grand Duke, who thinks the Grand Duke maybe is the best one, I feel this special love inside my heart for Lady Jane, and not quite the same way that I do for the Baroness. Lady Jane is a very special part for me, and I think that the community would agree with me that she does belong above the Baroness. I gave her a 15 out of 20 for music. This is maybe where I added an extra point. I think initially I gave her a 14. She doesn't have too much music, but actually what she does have is lovely. Her vocal line and her aria proper I don't think is terribly interesting, but I love her recit before the aria. I love her little bits that she gets to sing in the Act 1 finale, but most of all, I love her duet with Bunthorne. I think So Go to Him is so good. It was my 3rd favourite duet, I think, in my 47 duets in the canon. Mostly, she's just such a laugh. I gave her 18 out of 20 for her lyrics/dialogue. Almost every line she has is really funny. And again, you just get such a clear idea of who she is. She is, on the one hand, this quite desperate, sad older lady. But on the other hand, she is so sure of who she is and what she wants. And there's something very powerful in that. There's something very powerful about just admitting what your flaws are. Just admitting who you are. And saying, yeah, I am older than all of you. And I am being vulnerable, and I'm admitting that I still love this man that you all love, and deluding myself that I have a chance with him. Yet, she could have ended up with him at the end if she'd wanted to. And I love her arc. I think her character arc is so interesting. It is a little bit of a shame, actually, that she doesn't end up with Bunthorne at the end. But on the other hand, it's such a subversion of expectation when she gets to the Duke that it's just worth it, comedically. Because she's going on about him all the way through, like, I alone remain staunch to Reginald. The fickle crew have deserted Reginald. It's so good. Her lines just give me chills. I love all of her lines. Even when she's just echoing other people. So do I dare say. Will you be quiet? He always crushes me. Crushed. Again. I think most of her marks came from her dialogue. I gave her a 9 out of 10 for emotional complexity. She has the power to be hysterically funny 1 minute and making you sob the next minute. She's just this perfect character. Oh, Lady Jane. I gave her a 7 out of 10 for her importance to the narrative. Again, just like most of these Alto characters, her presence isn't terribly important to the story, but she does help it along quite nicely. So she gets the standard mark of 7 for that. I just remembered another line. I didn't even look it up, I just remembered it. Bunthorne, He has come over us. He has come among us and idealised us.
But yesterday I caught him in her dairy, eating fresh butter with a tablespoon. Today he is not well.
I love Lady Jane. And what makes me so happy is that I know that even when I'm a bit too long in the tooth to play these pretty soprano and mezzo parts, that I'll be able to play all of these incredible parts literally until I drop dead. I played Buttercup and Ruth already, and actually I did play Dame Hannah because I had to stand in for somebody in a full bear theatre show. But apart from that, I've actually not played any of the others, and I would love to, actually. Even as an actor now, I've got so many good ideas about what I would do with them, and when I think about the kind of actor I'll be in 20 years, it makes me very excited about being 20 years older. I mean, I'll get there when I get there. I don't want time to go past like that. But it makes me happy that I have this to look forward to. Number 2 is a character that I don't think I have quite as much love for, but I think I do respect just the level of the material that they have. And that is the Queen of the Fairies from IOLANTHE. I don't think that we have maybe as good an idea of who she is as a person. And that's because she's a fairy, I suppose. We only really get to learn about the heart of who she is in Act 2 when we discuss how she really fancies Private Willis and she's trying to get the fairies not to fall in love with mortals themselves. So we do get to learn a bit more about her, but maybe not to the same level. She doesn't expose her weaknesses perhaps to the same extent that Lady Jane does, but she is still a fabulous character, still extremely interesting. I gave her a 17 out of 20 for music. Boy, has she got some good music. The invocation at the start, all of her material in the Act 1 finale, oh my goodness, she is so strong. And that little portion of recit she gets to deliver to the peers is just mwah, absolute comedy gold. I also gave her a 17 out of 20 for her lyrics/dialogue. Her lyrics are wonderful. Her lyrics are very funny, very good. I don't think the Captain Shaw reference has aged terribly well, but I do love the poetry of it. I think everything she does in the Act 1 finale is just dynamite. I love her dialogue that she has, especially in Act 2. Here is a man whose physical attributes are simply godlike. That man has a most extraordinary effect upon me. If I yielded to a natural impulse, I should fall down and worship that man. But I mortify this inclination. I wrestle with it, and it lies beneath my feet. That is how I treat my regard for that man. She's not terribly relatable, I suppose, not in the same way as the others, but she just exudes such power and status that there's something really intoxicating about her. And I just imagine that, following on from what I'm saying about the fairies having this directorial scope of 10, just because she is magic, I just imagine you get such a kick out of performing that role. Maybe she's not quite as real as some of the other characters, but then in introducing this unreal magical scenario, it really highlights the times when she is being real. So when she is talking about falling in love with humans, and at the end, oh, Private Willis, in order to save my life, I must marry at once. The magic universe of IOLANTHE really allows you to properly get into the times when they do choose to be very real, very emotional, very straight. And the Fairy Queen does have these moments. I gave her an 8 out of 10 for emotional complexity and an 8 out of 10 for importance to the narrative. I think that she does drive the narrative in several areas. She's the one that tells Struffin what to do, and she's the one that leads most of the Act 1 finale and leads where that's going. So she certainly does do a lot to further the narrative, this character. And she has a lot of material. And the material she has is all very strong. There's not really anything she has that's weak. Coming in at number 1 with a score of 56 out of 60. I have given to the Alto character from the MIKADO. So I gave her an 18 out of 20 for music. The only reason I didn't give her higher is just because I'm aware that a mark of 20 went to Princess Ida. And I don't think she quite matches up to Princess Ida. So I'm just trying to give her a little bit of distance there. But hey, her music is all fantastic. Her entrance, O Fool Who Fleest Thy Hallowed Joys, The Hour of Gladness, Alone and Yet Alive. I think actually her 2 duets with the Patagai and the MIKADO, I think those 2 duets are actually the worst material she has. I think that her solo material is just absolutely glorious, absolutely iconic. I will talk more individually about Alone and Yet Alive in my alto arias video. I gave her a 10 out of 10 for emotional complexity for extremely obvious reasons. Like the Baroness von Krakenfeldt, she is fabulous and she knows it. She is very secure in herself. But she also has this really potent well of darkness inside her. But the interesting thing is, she is not at all insecure about her appearance. Even though she goes through this intense emotional journey, none of that is about the fact that she's apparently ugly. It's pretty much all because she loves somebody who doesn't love her back. And as we all know, that can be enough to send you into an absolute tailspin, or the Victorian equivalent of one. The lyrics that she has. The hour of gladness is dead and gone. In silent sadness I live alone. The hope I cherished, all lifeless lies, and all has perished save love, which never dies. Alone and yet alive, O sepulchre, my soul is still my body's prisoner. My soul is still my body's prisoner. Remote the peace that death alone can give, my doom to wait, my punishment to live. Hearts do not break, they sting and ache for old love's sake, but do not die, though with each breath they long for death and witnesseth the living eye. I shouldn't talk about these, I need to talk about these in my arias video. I gave her a 20 out of 20 for dialogue/lyrics. Everything she says is an absolute hoot. Everything. You hold that I am not beautiful because my face is plain. But you know nothing. You are still unenlightened. Learn then that it is not in the face alone that beauty is to be sought. My face is unattractive, but I have a left shoulder blade that is a miracle of loveliness. People come miles to see it. My right elbow has a fascination that few can resist. And as for my circulation, it is the largest in the world. And yet he fled. That "and yet he fled" is... it is one of my favourite lines in the canon. I'm actually going to do a video where I just rank like my top 50 one-liners. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be great. So yeah, she goes 18 out of 20 for music, 20 out of 20 for her lyrics/dialogue, 10 out of 10 for emotional complexity. I gave her an 8 out of 10 for the importance of the narrative. Even though she is very important, her entrance is quite late, and I think that she isn't maybe one of the very main characters of the story. I think of that as being the romantic leads, really. And there's so many great characters in that show that she is just one of a great bunch, and maybe isn't thought of to be the main character. And I've never played her, and I would like to play her one day. Again, I've got a lot to look forward to. Thank you ever so much for watching this video, and I don't know what's going to be coming next. I guess it'll be a surprise. But I hope you're all having fun watching these. Please, please do just click the subscribe button. It's a very easy thing to do, and it would make me feel very good. So if you like me and would like me to feel good, please hit like and subscribe. The more I get, the more validation I feel from doing this, and it just makes me feel like I've got a nice little community, and that is lovely. So please make me feel lovely and engage in the comments again. Please do let me know what you think. So that is all from me today, and I will see you for the next one.